What was the first commercial product that you launched?
Bridge design was the first product, was the main interest, but very quickly there was also a lot of interest in implant-based restorations.
What was the toughest year at Exocad?
The first years were the toughest in terms of workload. I mean, we started the company with just 3 people.
2023, the hottest topic is AI.
We continue to invest a lot in AI technology. It's an integral part of increasing efficiency both in the clinic and in the dental lab.
Were you ever tempted to get out of your own lane?
We're very much a software company.
Right.
Focus on the product and focus on the customer. Don't focus on other things that distract you.
What about 3D printing? What's your general thoughts on that? So, Tillmann, this podcast is about originators, about innovators, and I want to hear your story. This is about your backstory. Let's jump right into it. How did you start? Before you start, what were you doing?
I was actually a student. I was born here in Darmstadt, spent most of my life here, and studied here in Darmstadt at the Technical University, electrical engineering actually. Part of studying, you have to do an internship. At the time, I was very much interested in IT security. And to do that internship, I wanted to do it at the Fraunhofer Institute. Fraunhofer is a German-wide research organization, but more applied research. And that's what I liked about it. It's not pure academia. It's really close to what the industry needs. I went to the Fraunhofer Institute for Computer Graphics, IGD, and I walked in and later did an internship there. When I had graduated and wanted to have like a full-time job, I wanted to stay at Fraunhofer. A position became available in the dental group. That's how I got into dental initially. And it was a completely new world to me in 2006. The terminology and everything of dental.
What were they doing in the dental?
They were already back then, and even long before I started working at Fraunhofer, they were doing CAD for digital dentistry.
Interesting.
The whole thing was still in its infancy at the time. We had customers from the industry. I was managing also the relationships with these customers. And I realized that they were actually not getting what they wanted. They were getting R&D services, but what they actually wanted was a product they could sell. So although my original plan, and by the way, the same also applies to Mike, the co-founder of Exocad, our original plan was to do our PhD there at Fraunhofer Institute. But ultimately, we spent a lot more time doing product development. We spent a lot of time with customers, learning dental, understanding the industry, and also on the technology. I mean, we have both been passionate programmers. When we started, Mike is still today a passionate programmer. I probably would still be if I had more time to spend on programming. But anyway, so we did actual product development there. We actually created a successful product that was already selling while we were still researchers at Fraunhofer Institute. But ultimately, that's not the business model of a research institute to sell products. The next obvious step was to create a spin-off company.
Spin it off. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. So it was a spin-off from the Fraunhofer.
Yeah. It was a spin-off. The entire dental CAD technology from Fraunhofer was transferred to Exocad. Fraunhofer was also a shareholder in the first years.
You didn't plan to be in dentistry, right?
Yeah.
But you turned it into your biggest important thing in your life probably at this point.
Well, I mean, if you're outside the dental industry, you tend to underestimate how complex and how interesting the technology behind it is. So that was really, when I got into dentistry, the pleasant surprise how many interesting technological challenges there are in this industry.
What was the first commercial product that you launched?
Initially, we supplied the product mostly to customers and partners who used their own brand.
I remember
the breakthrough for us was IDS 2009 when we were still at Fraunhofer, where both presented CAD/CAM systems based on the Fraunhofer CAD technology, now our technology, and they used their own brand. Later, when we started Exocad, we continued this way. We had like this Intel Inside concept in mind.
Hey, you're going to be enablers to other companies.
Exactly that. But I was actually surprised that within not that much time, our brand became known in the industry and appreciated. So we pushed our brand more on the marketing side.
How did you choose the name Exocad?
We were basically quite systematically looking for a name for our company. So we wanted to have CAD in it because that's our core competence, and our core product is based around CAD. And I thought we were basically looking at combinations of letters. And I suggested to Mike Exocad, just an X and an O and then CAD. And he misunderstood it as Exocad and liked it. And I liked it too, much better than just XO. So that's how we came.
I'm telling you, it's a very good name. It's a very good brand.
Thank you.
And I think you guys have done a great job. So 2010, you became Exocad.
Yep.
And then what were you doing? Were you still programming back then?
Yeah. I was programming.
And what was Mike doing?
He was programming a lot more than me.
Who was the CEO at the time?
Mike was always the more technical guy. I mean, I was not a bad programmer, but I was never on the level as Mike. Always, even at Fraunhofer, I took care more of the business side, even though I was still occasionally writing code.
And then what was the first product? The first product was the crown design? Was it
Crown Bridge design was the first product, was the main interest, but very quickly there was also a lot of interest in implant-based restorations. One thing where we were very early on the market was the virtual articulator. This simply improves the quality of the restorations when it comes to the occlusal surface, the comfort for the patient. I started working on virtual articulation, as an example, already back in 2010 when the whole dental industry was new to me. And it's a complex topic, but I just got a physical articulator and I thought, okay, even if I don't know that much about dentistry yet, I can look at this thing with the eyes of an engineer. It's a mechanical thing and it has hinges and you can adjust it. We just simulate that mechanical thing in the software. So in that way, the first virtual articulator was a simulation of the simulation, because the physical articulator itself is a simulation of the patient. Yeah, and that was the first add-on module we started to sell.
Why virtual articulator is very hard. I also talk about our own world of designing night guards, and my CT is like, oh, it's a lot of joints, a lot of things happen. And maybe give more technical explanation of what's going on there.
The jaw movement is actually surprisingly complex. It's not just a single hinge where you open and close. It's actually a very complex neuromuscular movement. Getting it right for an individual patient makes a huge difference in terms of comfort, in terms of the stress you put on your joints. So it's a key element, but it's not easy. You have a lot of solutions for face bow, like classically digital face bow, how to optimally position either the models or the scan relative to the virtual articulator or the physical articulator. So it's really a whole ecosystem around the question, how do you optimally simulate movement of a patient? And one particularly interesting approach is not to simulate the movement of the patient, but to record it and to play it back in the software and then use that actual patient movement to design the occlusal surface.
But how did you fund the company?
Well, the easy thing in our case was we already had a working and commercially successful product from day one. That's a luxury that most entrepreneurs don't have. For that reason, we could.
So you had revenue.
We had revenue, and so it was privately funded, but there was no need for a lot of venture capital or anything like that, because we had technology. I mean, we had to pay for the technology, but not everything at once. We were in a quite comfortable zone compared to many.
So you never raised any funding after Fraunhofer, right?
Well,
is that safe to say?
When Fraunhofer, after a couple of years, they wanted to sell their shares. An external investor, Carlyle, came in.
What year was it?
That was in 2016.
Right now, you have a very extensive suite of software. Mm-hmm. And day one was probably Crown and Bridge, but now you can do dentures, you can do smile design, you can do full arch hybrid, you can do pretty much anything you can imagine you can design in Exocad. How long did it take you to build that, and how did you come up with the next and the next and the next?
Well, yes, it did take a long time. And the company is 13 years old now, so it did take a long time and a lot of conversations with partners, with users, and I think that's where our inspiration comes from. We always have to stay close to the user, and I think, and I'm not the only one in this company with a vision. There's of our team members here who contribute to that vision. Really staying close to the product, even as a senior manager, that is extremely important to me. I spend so much time on the product, even on details, I think it's important. The details matter. The product matters more than anything else, and the customers are the ones who know so much about the product. So staying close to the customers, staying close to the product.
Using your own product,
absolutely.
Right? That's what I always say.
Exactly. You have to take the
design
time
a crown with it. See what the experience looks like.
Exactly. You have to take the time to use your own product, to use the new developments yourself.
A long time I remember, this is an outsider view, everyone was saying, oh, if you're a lab tech, you got to use Exocad. If you're a lab tech, you got to use Exocad. But there was a shift. There was a shift from what I remember in probably 2018, 19. All of a sudden, clinicians started to use your products. Is that the same view you have?
Yeah, that's actually something we realized. So already for quite a few years, we have had a product targeted at clinicians with chairside CAD. Really simplified version of the CAD software with more automation that is more targeted at clinicians. Because that if you talk to clinicians, what they will typically say, it has to be simple. This is the key element in the practice. But on the other hand, we noticed that our lab product is extremely successful with clinicians. They want the full package.
Right.
Whether they use all of it, that's another story. But a lot of clinicians want the full scope of options. And that's okay, because just having those additional options is nice, but it doesn't complicate the product itself that much. So, for example, everybody knows how to use Excel, but most of us just use a small subset of
the 1% of functionality.
1% of functionality. But the one time you need that extra functionality, it's nice to have it. And I think that is the reason why our lab product is so successful with clinicians.
What was the toughest year at Exocad? Could you pinpoint that year was the toughest year?
The first years were the toughest in terms of workload. We started the company with just 3 people. There was really a lot of work. I didn't have a family back then.
2023, the hottest topic is AI.
We continue to invest a lot in AI technology, and I think it's an integral part of increasing efficiency both in the clinic and in the dental lab. We see it as a tool to make the life easier for lab technicians and for clinicians, but they can still be in the driver's seat. You don't want the AI to take decisions that either the dental technician or the clinician should take. So, we basically will make sure that whatever AI technology we provide, we always provide the option to achieve the result that you have in mind as a dental technician, as a clinician, and not just the result that the AI has in mind. If there's something like a mind of an AI, that's a philosophical discussion.
So I want to switch topics into whole acquisition of your company by Align Technology. It's been 3 years after the acquisition. You're still running the company like a champ. Tell me about how that happened, how it came into being, and tell me about your experience on that.
We got to know Align long before the acquisition happened. So
really?
We had long-standing relationships. I had visited several of the Align sites, knew the people we are collaborating with on the Align site today. And so we kind of knew what to expect. So it wasn't a random decision.
You were an investor on Exocad?
No, they were not an investor. We
were just collaborating.
Before Align acquired Exocad, we were owned by a private equity investor. But we had that relationship with Align, technical collaborations, doing projects together. And it was a very pleasant experience. And I've always been fascinated by the company. I continue to be impressed. Like after the acquisition, I was very much impressed by that willingness to invest in new technologies. We more than doubled the size of the R&D team since the acquisition. At Exocad, yeah. There's big projects, a lot still to do in the digital dentistry field.
Great to hear that you're continuing your vision after joining Align Tech. Well, tell me more about details of that process until decision making. I remember it was during COVID.
Well, it was during the onset of COVID. So before we were private equity owned since 2016. I think it's the normal cycle. Like
they want to
private equity exit. Investors. They buy a company, they help grow.
So you hire the banker.
It's a very important decision who you go with. It's not just the finance, but it's really which company do you think you can work with and be part of in the long term. And I'm very happy with the decision we made.
It's always a tough decision to make, and it's really, as I said, how's the post-acquisition life look like? And you're very happy. I see it's double the size of the team. When COVID happened, I think the deal was announced. Were you for a moment freaked out? Oh shoot, what's gonna happen?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, we were all concerned about what was going to happen, but it was more the pandemic situation than anything specific to the recent acquisition of Exocad at the time. The thing is, it was the first half of 2020, it was a transformative period. And in hindsight, it's hard to me to say, there were so many changes everywhere. We switched from office to home office work. We switched to digital collaboration.
So at Exocad, it's fascinating to me that you always stayed focused on the CAD part of the whole workflow. Because know, in dentistry, there's a data acquisitions, there's a design, there's output. Were you ever tempted to get out of your own lane?
We're very much a software company.
Right. You wanted to stay a software company.
I've always loved software. That's always been my passion. And there's great sides to it, I mean, when we talked earlier about, especially when you're a young startup, about the challenges that you face, it's great if you can bring a product to the market with a fairly low investment. You don't need expensive production facilities or stock keeping of parts or anything. So software is just a great business. We do CAD, but we also do treatment planning. And I think there's big future in these holistic approaches. We cover all aspects of digital dentistry in a consistent workflow on one platform. There's various areas that we're exploring there.
Amazing. What about 3D printing? What's your general thoughts on that?
Well, it's getting better all the time, and I think you're contributing to that a lot. So, I mean, for us as a software company, it's always good news if new production methods become available. That drives our business. If the quality increases, if the cost drops for a certain production method, type of appliance or restoration, that's always good for us. It makes the software more relevant. It decreases the barrier to entry, and especially if it gets easier. This is. We talked about the clinical market earlier. The whole process, the easier the whole process is, not just the software side, but the whole process. How do you get from a patient who has a preparation in his mouth to the final result? The easier it gets, the better it is for us as technology providers.
Yeah, and then at Sprint Ray, every single day we think of a new applications, new materials, and I think we both have witnessed how a new type of materials enable a new design, or vice versa. Or you came up we saw it with the full arch denture design, and how you guys became the market leader of designing full arch provisionals. At the same time, we brought this revolutionary Onyx Tough material that became the number one material for doing fixed prosthetics, and that was a new application. 5 years ago, probably that wasn't that much. Tillmann, you're a very busy CEO running the most successful CAD company in dentistry. What do you do as a hobby?
Well, I mean, the most important thing for me in my spare time is to spend time with the family. I like to travel, even on my spare time, and I like heavy historic vehicles.
Historic vehicle? What does that mean?
So around 10 years ago, I bought a historic fire truck. It's
like a firefighting truck? Wow.
It was complete, with tank and pumps and tubes, everything was there, and I converted that to a motorhome.
How did you decide to buy a fire truck?
Well, I mean, it's just
how do you find it? Just online?
I found it online.
Can I look it up?
Yeah, that's the model.
That is actually a very iconic truck. I remember this shape of Mercedes trucks were very, very iconic. Then it was not restored, right? You did it yourself?
Well, it was in perfect shape. So it was from a small village, and it had been sitting in a garage for around 40 years. So there was not much restoration to do.
Who was the owner?
A fire department of some small village.
So you bought it
nearby,
directly from the fire department?
No, it went through a dealer. But it still was a fire engine, and converting it to something you could live in, that was something that took quite a while.
How long did it take?
It took around a year.
A year. Yeah. Did you do it yourself, or you hired someone?
Most of it I did myself. I worked with a friend also, and but the thing is, like, as soon as the basics were there, as soon as there was a bed and a fridge and a sink and a stove, then I kind of lost motivation to finish it completely, because there were so many other things going on in my life. We used it in not entirely finished state for quite a long time.
Did you travel with it, or was it parked outside?
Yeah, of course. It was sometimes parked outside, but...
Oh, you sent me a picture of it. It's right here.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that. That's it?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
That's beautiful. Was it difficult to convert?
Well, I mean, it was a process, yeah. And
did you went inside a tank?
Yeah, well, the thing is, what they did back then, I thought when I bought it, I could just remove the tank from the vehicle. But what they actually did back then is they put the tank on the vehicle, on the frame, and then they built the rest of the vehicle around it. So there was no way to take the tank out.
Wow.
So I cut a hole into the tank, and then climbed into the tank and cut it into pieces from the inside. It was a fiberglass tank. I remember days later, I could still feel the glass fibers on my skin. Yeah. So yeah, that was a process, and we use that.
Do you still have it? Or
I still have it, and we use it for quite some time. I bought another historic vehicle, a bus, like a proper full-size bus, 12 meters long.
Let me look it up. What is that model?
That's a Setra, German bus manufacturer.
What year is it?
It's a 1981. The model is S140.
S140.
Yeah. And that one I bought completely finished, restored, and converted to motorhome already.
This is it?
Yeah, this is the model. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Beautiful. Yeah. Very, very iconic design.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And now you got me thinking, maybe I should try something like that. Did I tell you that the first ever company I started was a fire truck manufacturing, basically?
Oh, wow.
They putting bids on fire departments. This is years ago. It was a very unsuccessful, failed startup. And they're fascinating machines. Yep. Just the fact that you have to get a lot of energy from the engine, and you have to shoot water. They're just marvelous engineering, and Mercedes has been a leader of that. So any final thoughts on entrepreneurship, young software developers who want to start company as we're wrapping up the podcast?
Well, I think, as a young entrepreneur or someone who thinks of starting a company, I'm sure you've heard that before, but I will say it again because it's really true. Focus on the product and focus on the customer. Yeah.
Very important.
These are the most important things. Don't focus on other things that distract you. Of course, you need to collect money from investors. You need to do that, but the main focus should be the product and the customer. If you get that right, then you're good.
Yeah, no, 100%. And a lot of times, especially coming from technical background, we get stuck in perfection. Getting the software ready. It's not ready, and it's so important for younger software developers, engineers, to draw the line, put the imperfect product in front of customers, let him test it, let him get feedback. Very important point that you
absolutely. Software is never finished. It's an ongoing process of improvement.
Exactly,
and it's also part of agile development to get stuff in the hands of the user as soon as possible, as soon as it's useful for them.
Very true, very true. Tillmann, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for all the time, and you spent pretty much the whole morning with me.
Well, thank you, Amir.
Brother.
Thank you for your visit.